start with the session. Let me try sharing my screen. Yeah. So today we have a speaker, Akshan Sharma, with us. Okay. And to those who were not present during his introduction, so he has worked on multiple technologies like Power Automate, Power Pages, CRM, and mostly Power Platform stuff and Copilot Studio. Today, our topic of conversation is how to boost performances in Power Apps, in specifically Canvas apps. So we have two categories, Canvas app and model apps, model-driven apps. So today we'll focus on Canvas apps. He will share his knowledge, his experience on how he has tackled customers and different questions about performance and which artifacts within the Canvas app can help us achieve the same. A little about the community, how who we are and what we do is we are part of Mumbai India Dynamics community Power Platform user group. You can see we have as we speak we have 1.73 okay subscribers on YouTube. Then you can also visit us on the community.microsoft.com user group. Okay, and we also have a LinkedIn page. So these are the group leaders that we have. First is Rakesh Darge, and he's also present in this meeting as we speak. So Rakesh is an MVP, and he has consecutively for the past 2 to 3 years he's an MVP, and he's also a fast track recognized solution architect. Okay, by Microsoft. He has been working as part of the fast track solution team in TCS, heading in multiple directions and heading multiple clients in different regions, helping them throughout the day on carrying out their businesses and the business solutions. We have the second user group is leader is Sukrut Parab. He's also an MVP and an FTRSA recognized solution architect, and he is part of our user group and group leader. He has been a group leader for the past 1 year. And third is just me, Kizar Ansari. I have been part of the group for the past 1 year as well. And I also worked with Rakesh in multiple projects, and I'm a technical developer in Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations. So before we proceed, a little housekeeping rules. So in our meeting today, we'll try to maintain the decorum during the session. That is, you can always ask questions during the the end of the sessions, where we'll have a separate Q&A for you to ask the questions. We request all the participants to be on mute and raise your hand when the Q&A starts to ask a particular question, and unmute yourself to answer to ask the question. Also, you can also guide us and help us and reach us out to tell us what are the different topics that you are interested and you would like us to arrange sessions in the future. So let me hand over to Akshansh so that he can start with his session. Hi Akshansh, handing over to you.
Thank you, Kizar. Thank you all for joining on a Saturday, that too during the festive season. So your presence means a lot. So today, as Kizar mentioned, we'll be talking about how to boost performance of your Canvas apps and what needs to be done to maintain that performance from the start itself. So let me quickly share my screen so that you can click on. All right, let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. All right, so yeah, we'll be talking about performance and best practices. So when you are actually doing the development of your Canvas apps, what all best practices you need to keep in mind in order to maintain your performance, improve your performance, and you should not develop something or choose something which will break down the line. So those are the best practices, performance things we'll be talking about in today's session. So agenda for today's call. So we'll be talking about multiple topics. So we'll start from identifying the criticality of multiple small things, who is your enemy, and then we will jump into what data sources are available there, and the two most commonly used premium data sources we'll be talking about, that is Dataverse versus SQL. when to choose what, and then we will be looking into how to write your formulas, your delegation, and memory management. Delegation, if you're not aware, is a concept where our apps try to offload the query running or your filter or your lookup or any condition to your database itself, your server itself, be it your database, be it your SQL. Some functions here and there are available with SharePoint as well, delegable functions. Then we'll be talking about media. And when you are trying to make your Power Apps Canvas app look pretty and trying to adhere a particular UI UX requirements from your customer or from your team, you'll be using media, and what are the best practices to use media, and how to keep your performance up to the standards when you are actually working with media, and what you should not do so that your performance will be degraded. Then we'll be talking about common mistakes we all do, been there, done that, guilty of that, all those things, then best practices, performance, and then we'll be taking questions. So that's the agenda for today. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. So I'm the delivery director of Synapse. That's my job title. And but in theory, I generally on a day-to-day basis, I do Power Platform architecture roles and pre-sales architecture. I design how the solution should work when you're developing something on top of Power Platform, how your customers' queries should be addressed in a proper way. So those are my activities on a day-to-day basis. I'm a Microsoft Community Super User, Power Apps Community Super User. I'm founder of Bangalore Power Platform User Group. I write blogs, create content, YouTube, and hobbies are like cricket, volleyball, swimming, gymming, sports person kind of a thing. So that's a bit about myself. Then let's start. Now, when you're developing, who's your enemy? Now, the screen you're seeing is basically your enemy. This loading screen, if this is appearing, or the loader you see in the below image, these dots keep going, and nothing gets visible on your screen, this is your enemy. If you see this, immediately you can conclude that something is really wrong with the Canvas app, which you are trying to build. Now, if this gets visible and your Power Canvas App Studio is loading non-stop, taking 5 minutes to load a screen, that means you have either not followed something best practice wise, or your Canvas app is heavily loaded with logic, with components, with on-screen controls, cross-screen references, which we'll be talking about down the line in this session. Now, Dataverse versus SQL. So can anyone tell me from the attendees, can you tell me what you can understand from these three different charts kind of a thing? Can anyone understand what this mean? Any guess would be fine.
Seems like it's an API call kind of OData request.
Yes, exactly. Anyone else? You want to give a shot? No? Okay. That's all right. So the worst one is this one, right? So the gateway one. So the moment I see this, I want to cry myself out. I want to kill myself, really. The reason is when you are working with Dataverse, SQL, or any other different data source, what it actually does, let me see. Yeah. So this particular section here, the gateway one, this is the most irritating part when you're working with on-prem SQL specifically. Now, I'll explain one by one what this all means. So, for example, we'll talk about this one first. That's the first one. So, what you have is you have your Canvas app layer at this stage, and what you are doing is you are doing any kind of call OData to your API. So now, if you're doing any API call, and yes, so if your Canvas app is doing any API call to your connector, now if you worked with Canvas apps or Power Automate flows or anything, this technology Power Platform works with connectors, right? So you have a connector for your Dataverse, you have a connector for your SQL, you have a connector for your AWS, your SharePoint, and everything. So that's this layer. And the moment you trigger that connection or trying to call that connector or use that connector, you are at this layer. So you do this API call, it goes to the connector, and then it goes to the data source. This is your classic um, approach for any cloud-based data source, any cloud-based data source except Dataverse. I'll talk about Dataverse in the third one. So this is your classic cloud-based data source. You do API call, it goes by a connector, and it goes to the data source and fetch back your result. Let's say you're doing filter. So that's where it does the API call, goes to the connector, goes to the data source, and fetch back your filtered result. Now, second one is this one, and I hate this. So whenever I see on-prem, just don't like it. So similarly, you have Canvas app here, then you have API, you have connector as well. It goes via the standard SQL connector in your Canvas app, and then it goes via the gateway. This is where performance goes down the drain. Why? Because assume each of these layers, like this layer, this layer, this layer, and then this layer here, and then this layer here. Each of these layer will take some time to process your request, right? Now, if you have more gates where your query or your request is passing, right? So every time it knocks on one door, okay, please open, I have a request. Gate opens, next door, knock, gate opens, next door, knock, gate opens. Now, the more gates you have, the slower your process becomes, right? So that's why with on-prem SQL or any on-prem data source work, and you're trying to work with Canvas applications, you have an additional gate, which is this gate here. And this gate takes up a lot of time to process your request. It's not on cloud. So you have to go on-prem, knock it. Sometimes it opens, sometimes it doesn't open, it fails with some random error messages that the server throttled your request, your authentication does not meet the required criteria and everything. But if you're lucky, it opens the door, you goes to the data source, run your query, and fetch back the result, which is this arrow here to your Canvas app. But it is the most time-taking process as well. Now then comes our beloved Dataverse. Now Dataverse is one of the most tightly integrated data source when it comes to Microsoft Power Platform. Now, Dataverse is Microsoft's own database in order to create your Canvas apps or anything. Now, if you are working with a Canvas app, you don't have any layer, right? You can directly call Dataverse and fetch back the result lightning fast, because this is Power Platform native database. You can say that. That's why it takes the least amount of time to process your request, and this is the quickest one as well compared to any cloud-based data source. And worst one is your on-prem cloud or on-prem SQL or any on-prem data source. So when you are actually have a choice, I would suggest you to choose Dataverse. And what you need to do to improve your performance. So this is your very first step towards a better performing Canvas apps. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask at any point of time so that I can take it up as well. So that's what it means when that's the process of choosing an ideal data source for your Canvas apps. Then we'll compare our Dataverse and Azure SQL or any on cloud SQL, not on-prem SQL. So round one, let's start. So Dataverse. Dataverse is for your citizen developers. So if you are doing, let's say, low-code development, you come from a business background, or you upskill yourself to be a Power Platform developer. Now, Dataverse is for your citizen developers. SQL on the other hand side, it's for pro developers. Now you have stored procs, you have views, you have triggers, you have ACID properties to adhere to, you have atomicity, all these normalization concepts and everything. So it's for pro developers. Then Dataverse offers simplicity and accessibility. Now, simplicity in terms of ease of use, tightly integrated with your Power Platform, and accessibility in terms of how easy it is to access your out-of-the-box tables, your tables within your Canvas apps, within your Automate. You can perform unbound actions, and all these different features are available and readily, easily accessible within Power Platform itself. But on the other hand, SQL advanced tools are there. It offers flexibility, stores large data, large volumes of data, and the data cost or the data storage cost itself is very cheaper compared to Dataverse. Then we have streamlined solution management. You can easily add all your tables within your solution, which is again a best practice, which we'll talk about on the line, and deploy it. Let's say you have your dev, it goes to your UAT, and then it goes to your prod environment. So it is very easy to do that. But in SQL, you have to do, if you're not using DevOps pipelines, you have to migrate your database manually. Yes, I know, very bad, but that's how we need to do. You need to do the migration manually, and Dataverse offers set of standard tables out of the box, which you can use it, and readily available with the standard schema and everything. So that was round one, pretty much the same. So Dataverse and SQL, they both offers very good set of features. So I guess round one was dry. Let's start with round two. So Dataverse, it offers plugins, it offers standard views, and security and compliance. Now, I would say the competitor or the relative feature which is available in SQL of plugins is stored procedures, which are really powerful, like really powerful. You can do anything with stored procedures in SQL. But there are plugins available in Dataverse, and you can write literally anything within C#, so that if you can write anything with C#, then you can do anything within plugins itself. Then views, I would say, are limited in Dataverse, and you can do some kind of normalization in views, but not to the extent of SQL views, which are like really powerful again. And you can denormalize, you can create your set of columns, you can do calculations and everything. But on the bad side of SQL, it's more expensive to set up, and not all organizations are ready to pay for your SQL cost as well. So that was round two, Dataverse versus SQL. These are again some advanced features for data management, both Dataverse offers. Then our last round is round three, Dataverse versus SQL. So what all additional features Dataverse offers? Dataverse offers automatic backups, and Dataverse offers security roles. Again, native to Dataverse, this security role feature is really good. So you can manage row level security. Now what that means, so let's say if you have 10 different rows, and one department needs to view, let's say, only top 2 rows. So that can be your sales department, your marketing department, your delivery department as well, right? So 2 rows should be visible to your sales department, right? So if you are opening your Canvas app, anyone from marketing would only see those 2 rows, and anyone from your sales would only see the bottom 2 rows. That's how powerful security roles can be within Dataverse, and it flows nicely to your Canvas apps as well. So you don't have to actually manage your conditions, your filters and everything within your Canvas applications. Your security roles from Dataverse can easily accommodate your row level security. That's how powerful Dataverse is. But SQL, on the other hand, offers you modern applications, IoT, analytics. It's easier to integrate with any streaming platform data. If you're building a data warehouse, then you have AI alerting, It is easier to integrate with legacy systems because you have 25 years old, 20 years old systems which are still running on SQL. And if you are migrating from those systems to SQL, it is very easier to lift and shift that data to your SQL. Now, that's the advantage of SQL. Then we have ALM, which I talked about. If you're doing solutions and you're using Dataverse, it's very easy to just add all the tables within your solution and run your import, export, or pipelines, and automatically everything is deployed in one go, compared to SQL, where you have to do it manually. Now, these are the set of features which both the data source offers. Now, after the third round, I would say we have a tie. Now, why we have a tie? Because both Dataverse and SQL offers really powerful features. That is, like ALM, your integration with native legacy systems, your out-of-the-box tables, your stored procedure features. So both are very good choice when it comes to a good performing Canvas apps. But the choice really depends on your project need. Now, if your project wants to integrate with a legacy system, clearly your choice is SQL. If you don't have to integrate it, but your priority is ALM, your priority, by the way, ALM is application lifecycle management, if no one is aware about it. So ALM means like pushing your solution or your developed product to your UAT and your prod environment. So if your choice is that use of out of the box tables and easily accessible features, all these different things within Power Platform, clearly your choice is Dataverse. Yes, Weber, you unmuted yourself. You want to ask something?
No.
All right. Right. So that was our one-to-one between Dataverse and SQL. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. So after tying between Dataverse versus SQL, let's move into our formulas, delegation, and memory management. So what does it mean when we say formula, delegation, and memory management? So formulas, if you ever worked within Canvas applications, there are some formulas which you have to write that is called PowerFX. So Canvas apps offers their own native PowerFX language to write your formulas. It is just Excel formulas, but a bit more advanced and matured, I would say. The delegation concept I explained. Memory management we'll talk about just now. So when we are developing a Canvas applications, right? So we are trying to develop front end and back end together with your Canvas app. I would say it's a low code full stack platform, right? Because you are doing front end and back end both. Back end can be SQL, can be Dataverse. Now, when you are doing this kind of development, it becomes very crucial that you handle the data which is cached within your Canvas app carefully. So when it comes to data in memory, that is the first point, it becomes very crucial that you are caching the data up to its limit only. You are not going beyond that limit. So for example, if you are trying to cache data from a non-delegable function, that means you are trying to look up something, you are trying to do update, you're trying to do remove, and you are trying to cache that data locally to Power Apps. Then there is a limit out of the box. It will handle 2000 records, up to 2000 record in memory only, if you're working with non-delegable functions. So it becomes very crucial that you try to cache data as low as possible if you are working with non-delegable functions and non-delegable data source. But if you're working, let's say, with SQL, with Dataverse, and you're working with filter and lookup and all these things, and you're working with stored procedures, by all means, go wild, cache your data. There is no limit to it. But when caching the data, you have to be mindful what data source you are actually working with, what functions you are actually using to cache the data. So the term is collections, which is the third point. And when you are caching the data, you store them in a collection. Now, collection size depends how you are caching the data. So if you are going beyond the limit, so let's say you are going with a non-delegable data source, then the moment you cross 2000 limit, your 2001 ID won't be visible in the application at all, which would be a very bad, because your users won't find the required data in order to do their set of actions. So that's why it becomes very important that you are playing very carefully with delegation, memory management, and formulas, and understand what functions are delegable, what data sources are delegable, what functions are delegable with what kind of data source. So that becomes very important. Then let's talk about the actual PowerFX stuff. So we talked about caching the data and creating collections in memory and everything. So if you see here, what I have is I have this concurrent function. Now, what does this function mean? By the way, before we start with concurrent, you can see this clear collect here. So this clear collect is your syntax to actually create your collections. That is, this is your data source. That is your product. Can be a list, can be a SQL table, or can be a Dataverse table. But FYI, this is a Dataverse table which is called product. Then you have sales fee and the product. That is your key, lookup key, or anything. So that's how you create your collection and cache the data. You're caching the whole table here basically. Now you see you're caching 4 different tables within your Canvas app, right? So if you don't do concurrent, what you are doing basically is you are executing these 4 statements one by one sequentially, right? So you will execute first one, then second one, then third one, and then fourth one. So first one is taking 5 seconds to perform its action. Then the second action will wait for 5 seconds and then execute the second one, which will take, let's say, 7 seconds. Similarly, the third one and the fourth one. But there is no interdependency between these 4 actions, right? So there is no dependency between your clear, collect, prod, and your customer, right? There is no dependency. So what you can do is you can parallelly run them all 4 statements at once. That is your concurrent function. So if first one is taking 5 seconds, second one is taking 7 seconds, third one is taking 2 seconds, and fourth one is taking 5 seconds again. The combined 4 statements will take 7 seconds to do the operation. Now that's how powerful concurrent function is. Instead of sequential execution, you turn them and you do parallel execution. So it's a good practice to always use concurrent function whenever you have sequential steps which are not interlinked with each other. Use concurrent function always. Then we have delegable filter. So we talked about delegation, what delegation means, and the delegable filter, delegable functions, and data sources. Now this is an action, right? So filter is delegable with most of the data sources, i.e. filter is delegable with SharePoint, filter is delegable with SQL, filter is delegable with Dataverse as well. So in this example, I am trying to filter the budgets table with some filters, i.e. primary email should be the current user email, business unit name should be this data range string, and your return from your data source will be a subset of your data instead of the whole table, which is something like this. So here, see, I don't have any filter. I am directly using my table name, but here I have filter and I am using my table name inside the filter, which will give me filtered subset from my data source. Now this becomes very crucial when you're working with large data. I'm talking about tens of thousands of rows in your database. If you're not doing filter, it will be very difficult for Power Apps to cache the data and process it. And your performance will be very slow because every time any query runs, it will iterate through your data records and take n number of minutes to actually do the processing and everything. So that's your delegable filter whenever you are using any sort of tables, any sort of list. Always try to use filter and shift the logic from your Canvas app to your database, which is called server-side delegation. So that's how you do it. And then we have media. So I talked about trying to make your Power Apps look pretty, right? So when you are trying to do that, it becomes important that you are working with some kind of images, some kind of icons, because let's be honest, before modern controls were introduced, it was nearly impossible to make your Power Apps look pretty with standard controls. So that's why we start using SVGs, and we start using images, we start using GIFs and everything. But if you are directly importing your images, your icons, your GIFs, then your Power Apps will load them every time before it actually starts processing the your code, your logic, and everything, right? So it's a best practice to always use SVGs instead of your images, your standard images, and import SVGs format and keep your Power Apps as light as possible when it comes to media. But if you can't convert anything as SVG, you can use the image itself, but it's always good practice to use SVGs, which is the lightest format for any kind of icon, any kind of image. And you can use this code, which is like your SVG code. There is a very good resource available called SVG repo. So that website will give you this code, and the format you see here within this format, this encode URL till this double quote, this is Power Apps format to recognize the SVG code, right? So this data image SVG plus XML UTF and encode URL function, this is your Power Apps format to recognize your SVG code. And you can get this code from here till here from your SVG repo. Huge library of SVGs, icons, modern looking icons, modern looking images, which you can use. Get this code, encode it within your Canvas app and start using them. Or you can directly export the icon as SVG format and import it as SVG format. That will also improve the performance. If you are working with, let's say, 10, 50, hundreds of icons within your Canvas app, and your Power Apps won't load them before it even opens your landing screen. So again, a very good practice to use SVGs within your Canvas app. And that's the code of you doing it. Then we have best practices. So when you are building your Canvas app, right, and it's always a good practice to keep your on app start property as light as possible, right? So what app on start property means? That means what you want to run as a piece of code before even starting your actual processing, by your landing screen, by your home screen, can be any screen, right? So it's always a good practice to keep your on app start property as light as possible, so that your Power Apps is not taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes just to process your huge code on Power Apps on app start property. So that's the very important thing. Try to keep your on app start property as light as possible. Then we have cross screen control references. We have all been there, we have done this, but the impact is way greater than you think, right? So the cross screen control references is the most notorious one in terms of degrading the performance of your Canvas app, right? So if you have one screen, let's say you have a gallery there, and you are trying to open a gallery record in edit mode, right? In edit mode, and you are navigating users from that screen to another screen, and your form item property is, let's say, gallery dot selected. If you do that, we have all done that, and if you do that, the impact, so in the background what happens is basically your next screen where you navigated the user to, before even loading that screen, what Power Apps will do is reload your previous screen again, and then it will load your edit screen. So if you have, let's say, multiple components on the screen, right? You have probably 50 or 100 or 500, 100,000 controls on the screen. Loading each and every of those components again will surely impact your performance. And this is the most notorious one I've seen so far, which degrades your performance drastically. So if you are trying to reference a gallery.selected item or anything, it's a good practice to store them in a variable first on click of your view icon, and then use that variable in your subsequent screens instead of referring the gallery.selected itself. So hope that makes it clear. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask at any point of time. Then we have this property called form.updates. So it's advised to avoid using this property because every time you make a change within a form.updates gets triggered, which is again an unnecessary thing to execute until and unless you have a very solid reason to use the updates property. So that's what it is. That's why it is a good practice to avoid using form.updates, and instead try to keep your logic within your batch statement itself, so that any changes you do, that will be at the very end of user clicking the submit icon itself or submit button itself. Then we have nested for all, which we will see in for all. We will see why this is problematic, but nested for all, oh, that's even bad. So for all, for whoever who comes from a coding background, right? For all is not a loop in Power Apps. It's not. For all is an iterator. Now the difference between a loop and an iterator is that within a loop, you can terminate the execution at any point of time. So if you are iterating from number 1 to 100, you can say that, okay, go to 1, go to 2, go to 3, and then 4, terminate. You don't have to execute till number 100 or till you reach 100. That's a loop. You can terminate as and when you require by giving a condition of termination. Now with iterator, that is for all, you can't terminate. If you are giving it a condition that execute going from 1 to 100, it will go to 1 to 100. You won't be able to terminate. So for nested for all, you're basically doing that go from 1 to 100. That's your first condition of the iterator. And then second, what you are doing is, okay, create an equivalent record in your alphabet as well. So if you're at 1, create A. If you're at 2, create B. If you're at 3, create C. Then let's say you want to terminate that. Okay, if you are at 4, don't create anything and terminate. It won't terminate. It will not, you won't be able to terminate. So it will go to 4. If you don't have an equivalent condition inside your 4, it won't do anything. Go to 5, do create let's say C or D, and goes until 100. And that will take up a lot of time. Trust me, if you're using nested for all, I know sometimes we see an easy solution that, okay, this achieves my requirement and it's actually creating records, updating records nicely. But if you're using nested for all, it will take loads of time to actually process your iterations one by one, which is really bad when it comes to updating or modifying or creating, let's say, 100 or 200 records at the same time if you're working with an enterprise level Power App. So nested for all, that's why it's best to avoid nested for all. Then lastly, we have nested galleries. which is again very, very important to understand why it is not a good practice and what will be the impact. So if you are trying to create a parent-child hierarchy within your Canvas app, which is not very uncommon. So it will be very common if you're working with a nice UI, you have a normalized database and you want to create an equivalent UI, you will be creating nested galleries. But the problem with nested galleries is the same concept. So if you have one gallery with, let's say, 7 different components, and you have another nested gallery or gallery within a gallery with, let's say, 20 different components to display. Now, technically, a gallery should be counted as one component, and each component should be counted as one when your overall sum comes up on that screen. But that's the thing, it doesn't count like that. It actually multiplies. So if you have 7 in your first gallery and 20 components in your nested gallery, instead of counting them as 27, it will count as 7 times 20, and that will degrade your performance very, very drastically. And that's why you will see the components. If you go to app checker, you will see components on the screen, probably 100, 1000, 1200, 1500, and you'll scratch your head and say, okay, I only have a couple of nested galleries on my screen, why it is going till 1500 components on my screen? And you won't be able to figure it out. The moment you delete one nested gallery, the number comes down to 700, one more 200, and one more probably 5 or 6. So that's why nested galleries is really bad, because it multiplies the components on the screen, because it's taking that much time to actually load your nested galleries, perform your filters, or perform your lookups and everything. So that's why nested galleries is a very bad choice when you're trying to build the UI. In order to avoid that, what you can do is use pop-ups on the screen. So you click on your parent gallery, you give them a pop-up which behaves like a, or which looks like a nested gallery, but it is another pop-up on the screen showing which record you clicked and what are the related records to that particular parent clicked records. That's how I handle scenarios when I have to implement nested galleries. Any questions so far? Anything? No. Okay. Then this is very important. So the next best practice which we will be looking is how you will be saving your data, right? So there are 3 approach. So first one is our all-time favorite, using a for all. For all your collection and patch one by one. If you have, let's say, 10 employees to update, your patch will run 10 times, and it will create 10 different records. Nice iterator, does the job, never breaks, right? But this is the most time consuming process you will ever find within a Canvas app. You are iterating one by one on 10 employees and creating or updating them one by one. If you have, let's say, 100 employees to update, you will be looking at 15 seconds of load time easy. Now, what's the alternate? Alternate is patch and for all. Now, what I've done? Nothing, just swapped them. Instead of for all patch, I am doing patch and for all. Now I'm saying Power Apps, instead of iterating over one by one on multiple employees, what you have to do is first do a patch call and update everything which which is present in call update employees, and update these 2 columns. Now this is pretty fast, and what we are doing, we just swapped patch and for all, and improved performance probably 10 times, probably more than 10 times. And this is one of the fastest approach to actually save your data, which is a very key event when you're building a Canvas application, to actually capture what user has performed using the UI and save that interaction in your database. Then the best one is this one, which is called batch patch. Now this is the most performant and widely accepted approach to actually patch your solution or your to patch your collection. So you have a patch statement, your table name, and what you're doing is you are saying that out of your call update employees, right, you might have 200 or 500 columns in this, right? What you are saying is I only want to update ID, full name, and active, and if I have 1,000 employees, I don't care, update them all at once. And this approach will do that in a flash within less than a second, compared to this for all, which will take probably 15 to 20 seconds to just update probably 50 employees itself. So that is called batch patch. And this is the widely accepted approach and the best practice when it comes to creating large number of records or updating large number of records. Now, if you are only updating one or two every time, you won't find any difference between this approach and this approach. Let's be honest, if you're updating two records, this will take probably 2 seconds and this will take probably some nanoseconds to update. Not that much of a difference. But if you're updating 100 records, 50 records, there you will find the difference of 15 seconds, 20 seconds. I've seen that enemy, the initial enemy, the loader, which takes up to 15, 20, sometimes more than 30 seconds to load a huge collection of data and store them in the database. So that's why it becomes important that we are using the batch approach. Then within PowerFX, so we have a with function as well. So what does this mean? So the with function, what it does, so if you look at the bad practice of code, which is blank lookup, and then you have your table, database table, some conditions, everything, and then this lookup, you see this lookup again gets repeated here. So this lookup is actually a redundant code within your formula, right? So you have this once, and then you have this twice here. So is this a good practice? No. That's how you increase your API calls from your Canvas app to your source. Every time you're doing a lookup, a filter, anything, it's an additional API call to your data source to fetch the data. Now, what's the alternate? What's the best practice? Best practice is use of with function. With function, you create formula level variables, right? So you have global variables, you have local variables, then you have formula level variables, which is your with function. So you see expiry duration I created as a variable. I use this, I pass or created this lookup once and stored that value inside expiry duration and used it here, here, and here. Right? So I am doing one API call and I am reusing that in 3 different instances, which will obviously improve my performance. So if you are doing multiple API calls, then it's good to have with function always be always used inside your PowerFX code. Right, so that was our with function and how to use them. Other best practices are publish your app regularly and always write your version notes so that you are actually aware why you are publishing this version and what's the actual change you did within this version. So that's one of the other one. And then we have use solution, allow customization. So if you don't want to allow users to create unmanaged layer within your Canvas app when you deploy it to your version to prod, your UAT, then it's always good to use your solutions property called allow customization and toggle it to false. By default, it will always be true. So that's why it's a good practice to always allow customization toggle off if you're working with Dataverse or SharePoint. But if you're working with SQL, don't disable this, otherwise you won't be able to update your connection references, which is a pain. So those are some of the other best practices within that. And name formulas. This is probably got released a year back. Now, what this means, so if you have immutable variables on your app start property, Immutable meaning you don't want to update them during a user session, right? So if I open the Canvas app, I don't want I can't change my, let's say, email address. I can't change my image, right? Those are immutable variables, unnecessarily created as a global variable on your on app start property. Now, for the last 1 year, our best practices to use named formulas. So for example, your record ID, your parameter, if you are doing, let's say if you're building your deep linking and everything, you create them as name formulas instead of global variables. Current user will never change if you are opening it with your profile. So it's always good to store my profile or the user profile in a named formula variable. User photo won't change, right? So this is what I mean when I said immutable variables should be created as named formulas. This is a property similarly to app on start. So app.onStart, this is app.formula. So use app.formulas property to create variables whenever you have immutable variables. So that's one of the other best practice. And then lastly, we have component library. So if you have, let's say you are trying to create a navbar, right, which is static across your application. So you are creating the same navbar, probably 5 or 7 components redundantly across your screens. So if you have navbar or header, which I'm showing here, so this is a header, right, used across your screens within your application, it's always a good practice to create header as a component and then use that component in your screen. So component meaning it's a reusable header which you can use across your screen. Change it once in your component and it will reflect on all your screens. So that's what component is. And if you are using any redundant component of UI across your application, across your screens, it's always good to create a component and then use that component on your screens. So you don't unnecessarily use your controls limit on your screens. And lastly, we have monitor tool. So monitor tool is very important in order to identify what particular formula is taking up your time to actually load that screen. So if you look at the screenshot, you can see my clear collect, that is my operation, is taking this much amount of time. You can calculate this, and if you open this, you can actually see the duration as well, which is something like this. So you see get rows here, it's taking 19,000 milliseconds, right, which is roughly around or 19 seconds, something like that. So similar to this one as well, which is again a network call, which is a get row success, but it's taking another 19 seconds. So you see 19 seconds. Now, if you're looking at a screen without knowing where to look and what to look, you will never identify that this get row, probably a filter or a lookup, is taking 19 seconds to load. But by looking at the monitor tool, you can identify this very easily just by looking at the duration column, see how long it's taking, and improve it, try to rewrite it, and try to improve it. So that's how you can identify the bottlenecks in your performance as well. So yeah, that was my last topic to cover. And now I'm open for any questions, any queries throughout the session. If you have, feel free to ask.
So guys, the forum is open. You can unmute your mic, raise your hand, and ask the questions whatever you want. So Akshansh will answer those questions. Yeah, Akash, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like you said about the component, right? I think component I try to use in my application, but it is basically just restricted to it is not depending on the data source which we create. If I want, you can see the pop-up thing over there. If I want to mention a table name, like yeah, you have created a data successfully in so and so table. I am
Yes.
unable to add that table name or the record data which is available on my screen to this component. Even if I want to go for the next screen or something, you have a text at the heading. So I am
Yes.
unable to change that if I switch to next screen.
Yes, exactly. So to do that, you have to enable the behavior properties, which got in general availability probably 3 weeks back itself. So earlier, yes, it was not possible to update your text, update your items property dynamically screen by screen. But now, if you create a custom property, and do not rely on the text property out of the box or the items property out of the box. Create a custom property behavior type and then use that property reference on your text label. That will update your text or your items, and you will be able to pass your collection, your filtered output and everything to your gallery or your label name.
Okay.
That answers your question.
So
Any other
Akash, I'll
question?
ask one question.
Yes.
Okay. So as you mentioned, I mean, as we understand, the more the UI elements, okay, you are focusing more on the fact that lesser components should be there, so that your Power App loads faster, performance is better. So let's
Yes.
assume I'm shifting from a legacy application which has multiple UI elements. So on a single,
Yes.
so how will you handle that? So we are shifting to a Canvas app kind of technology stack, and customer says that I want this form to stay the same. So how will you handle that?
Good question. So to handle that, I understand if you are working with a legacy application, it's very important that you keep your performance top notch, right? So if you are trying to work with any legacy application with loads of components on the screen, the best way to handle that is create that UI component as your component within your application, and then use the component on that screen. What that will do, if that UI component was comprising, let's say, 200 controls, and that was exceeding the threshold limit on your screen, then now, instead of 200, it will be one component on the screen, because everything is inside your component, which is reusable. So that will drastically improve your performance and keep your threshold limit for the screen down as well.
Okay. So guys, if you have any other questions, you can raise your hand as the forum is open as always.
Come on, guys. Was I that good in my presentation that you have no questions at all?
I think so. So let me quickly share my screen as well, so that we can conclude. So like we have arranged this session, we could keep on continuously arranging sessions, whether it be Power Platform, whether it be Dynamics Copilot Studio. If you want to, you want some topics, some real life topics that you have faced challenges, and you are looking, or either you are looking to give some sessions, you can reach out to us. Okay, on the left hand side, we have the LinkedIn profile for Mumbai India Power Platform user group. And on the right hand side, it's the community.dynamics.com link. So you can reach out to me, Rakesh, or Sukrut. Okay, we are also present on LinkedIn, and you can reach out to our community, and any kind of topics that you are interested, you can also share to us. Okay, if we do not have any further questions, are we good to close?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah,
Akshansh,
sure, go ahead.
actually, is there any blog or something that you mentioned that we have a new feature to implement collection or anything into component? So I would love to know about that. And also, I have one question related to code apps. The guy I posted recently about the code apps in my LinkedIn, and there was one question I was unable to answer. It was the more updates we are getting on Power Platform, it might be Power App or Power Automate. It is like increasing the power of external code, right? If even if we try to do PCF, or even if we want to do code apps, the guy is asking me, why would I choose Power App? I would rather go to SPFX in my SharePoint, which is my legacy system.
So Yeah, I think it depends what is your ultimate goal and what is the customer need. If the customer need is to get an application up and running within a month, let's say 6 weeks to 7 weeks, I would say, sure, your answer is Power Apps. You can have a fully functional application within 4 to 6 weeks of time. If it is easy to moderate implementation, have your database set up and running, right? But if you are not concerned about the delivery time and you have, let's say, 3 months, 6 months to actually go live with your SPFX code, you are actually spending time writing a pro code solution on top of your legacy system. So if that is something you don't care about, and you have all the time in the world to get your application up and running, and if you don't want to have additional expense in terms of premium licenses or your service accounts and everything, by all means go with SPFX code. So it depends what customer wants and when they want it.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. If there aren't any further questions, I believe we are good to close. Thank you, Akshansh. Thank you for the enlightening session. I hope you will keep joining us in our user group, and we will also join you in your user group in future.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Kizar. Thank you
Thank
everyone for
you.
joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.